Cool.
For sure. All right, let's talk some defense, huh? So,
Defense.
Danny Collins has been with PJ Fleck going all the way back to Western Michigan. He's, it's been talked about a lot how he had to work. He'd be working in the middle of the night just so he could afford to, chase his dream. And he's been with PJ forever, and PJ trusts him and all that kind of stuff. He brings what he's calling his havoc defense to the Gophers. And Collins has really big shoes to fill. Corey Heatherman was fantastic last year. As good as Joe Rossi was, Corey Heatherman, I thought, was better. Mm-hmm. And it was better because instead of sitting back and playing bend but don't break all the time, we were attacking and forcing turnovers and forcing the issue in a way that we hadn't in the past. So that was really exciting for me. I'm curious about your thoughts on Danny Collins. Do you think this defense is more of a Joe Rossi bend but don't break thing with Collins, or is it more like Corey Heatherman where it's like let's get guys, let's attack and force the issue, and we're going to give up a big play or two, but most of the time we're going to make things harder for the offense?
You'll probably see a blend between, Joe Rossi style and Corey Heatherman, because he's worked for both. He's worked for other people in his career and taken bits and pieces of, what each of those guys do and applied them into his own style, based on their personnel. I could see them being maybe a touch more aggressive with, the front seven pieces, the versatility, some of the guys that they could feature in the pressure look side of it, that they might, when they get into situations where they're in passing downs, do some things a little bit differently and send some pressures. But I also think they'll lean on some of the stuff that's worked before, like simulating creeper pressures, giving the illusion that they're going to blitz, but, dropping a defensive lineman in exchange for a second and third level defender and rushing four. Being able to eliminate explosive plays, that's the key to success. I mean, you don't want to be in spots where you're giving up chunk plays, because your odds of winning when you're allowing all of those plays go down significantly. So I think it's that art and balance of knowing when to send pressure and when to not. And I think that's where Corey Heatherman did a good job last year, is, switching pictures, changing pictures. I thought that the stylistic difference in that defense was, it was about pinning the pocket, forcing the quarterback to have to, work from impeded vision lanes in front of them, and then, change the coverage picture where it's like, they're rolling coverages different ways, inverting coverage responsibilities for certain guys. And that allowed them to get their hands on the ball, make some plays, create some turnovers by, the pass rush and the coverage working together in lockstep. So that's what I think was the big difference last year, was just those subtle tweaks. And you watch Corey Heatherman, he's off that Brian Haynes, Kirk Cignetti tree. They run that same type of defense where they're constantly rolling coverages and, changing the picture on the quarterback, forcing him to hold that ball for that extra half to full second. And at the end of the day, that can make a huge difference. So I think Danny will lean on the principles of Joe and just like fundamental coaching, eliminate the explosive play, and then also blend in some of the aggressive, picking your spot type of pressure stuff that Corey Heatherman added.
That's really exciting. I'm kind of pumped. And, Danny Collins also he is clearly a big upgrade as a recruiter. Mm-hmm. So I certainly hope he can get it done on the field, because what he's done recruiting his own room and now recruiting the whole defense, I think has been pretty impressive so far.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk D-line. So big time experienced returners in Devin Eastern, Jalen Logan Redding, and Anthony Smith. So that leaves, we'll talk about Anthony Smith, but that leaves, let's talk about the rush end spot. Do you think Jackson Howard is the guy? Like, do you think he starts there, or how do the snaps break down? And how do you feel about the depth behind him or behind them? And also, do you think the new Super Frosh, we had Koi Perich, now this year's version is Emmanuel Carmo. Is he a guy who potentially carves out a pass rushing role on third and long or whatever?
Rush end's a spot that I'm monitoring, trying to figure out, where are those guys at in development. We're not there as much. We're trying to, glean what we can from, what we see in practice. But I'd say like, Jackson, you got Lucas Finnessy, you got Carter Menz. Like, is it a rotational type of deal there where they're mixing those guys in? Does somebody take a big step forward and solidify themselves at that spot? That is something that people don't truly appreciate, I don't think, like how reliable and solid Danny Strigow was, and they'll find out because I think he's probably got a nice chance to, potentially push for a roster spot in Jacksonville as an undrafted rookie. You just
amazing.
look at like the progression that he, made over time, the ability to just execute the small details that maybe people don't notice on the surface. That like that position is super important. They had like Thomas Rush, and then they had, right into Danny. They had Boye before that.
Yep.
Like they've had very good pipeline here. Now it's like, is Jackson Howard able to take that step? Is it Lucas Finnessy? Is it Carter Menz? Like I'm curious to see who it is. And then you mentioned Carmo. Is Carmo more of like an off-ball, on-ball hybrid type of guy? Are they working him off-ball and then bringing him down on-ball for some certain packages and mugging him around? I think he's got great movement skills that they can capitalize upon and some versatility. It would be probably more in a situational type of role, but rush end is certainly a spot that I'm watching. Like, I want to see the progression of that group, through the fall into the first couple games.
For sure. No, I agree with you there. At tackle, well, first of all, Anthony Smith, man, that guy. I mean, you can put him anywhere. He is a terror. He's going to be a junior this year. I mean, I'm just really excited for him. It seems like he could bust out in a big way. Do you think he could be kind of a Big Ten household name at a certain point if if things break right?
Yeah, and I look at this year, the type of role that he could play, playing, he was inside a little bit last year, maybe more playing on the 5 and kicking inside occasionally. The physical and athletic traits are there. Does he take a step forward fundamentally in consistency to become, a guy that's disruptive all the time on a play-to-play basis? You saw what he was able to do, production-wise, he's able to put up disruptive numbers. Like, is he able to take that another big step in his game with playing in the type of alignments that he will be, potentially getting the matchups that he will get? I want to see, what's the next step for Anthony Smith in his development, his progression. He's going to be a key player. You look at this pass rush, those veterans, they're going to be leaning heavily on them because, you look behind those guys, it's a lot of unproven younger options that are going to be rotating and dashing in. So the snap shares on those guys are going to need those players to be very productive and stay healthy over the course of the season for them to be successful. Because I think this season will come down to how they perform on the O-line, how they perform on the D-line, how those pieces come together. That will dictate success.
For sure. Do you think, Devin Eastern's been around a long time, so has Jalen Logan Redding. I know a lot of people have been hyped on Eastern, going back to when he was a recruit. Is there another level there? Can he unlock something? It feels like, I know there's probably been one guy in between, but it feels like we haven't had a really disruptive defensive tackle who was always a problem since like Sam Renner.
Renner was unreal, man. God,
he was so good, right?
That is an underappreciated gopher, man. I'm telling you, get that guy matchups. I remember that Nebraska game he had. My gosh, he ripped it up, man. He was kind of fun to watch that year. They got him a lot of good matchups. But I look at Devin, like I thought he made a ton of progress as the season went on. I think this guy's gotten better. When you watch where he was at when he got here to where he is now, there's a tangible upward development there, which is kind of what you want to see. Now it's like, okay, he's upward. Is there another step in the progression like we talked about with Anthony? I think he's done better just adjusting to playing inside. He was a guy that was more of like that defensive end type of body type that bulked up and then went inside and had to learn all the ability to get underneath guys, play with your hands, good pop, get underneath guys. And I think that's something that he was able to do a little bit more as time went on. Like he became more disruptive. He's winning at the point of attack. And I think that now with another year of development, maybe he's able to take another step forward. Him and JLR inside are going to be counted on big time. And then after that, it's like, who can perform and take a step forward? Is it someone like Theo Randall? Can he potentially emerge? I think he won Neckton of the Week. PJ gave him Neckton of the Week. So
Nice.
maybe he's someone that can emerge as a rotational guy. I guess I'm curious at defensive tackle, who is that guy that can come in on a rotational basis and make an impact? Because you look at these teams that are successful and sustainable, they're able to have a lot of guys that can rotate, keep their pass rush fresh. Minnesota, I'm watching. I feel confident in the vets, like the three main guys, but then it's like, what happens after that?
Yeah. For sure. I would agree with you on all that stuff. Let's move on and talk linebacker. I mean, we got Maverick Baranowski back. We got Devin Williams back, which is so good. It's so great to have those guys. They've got a lot of experience at this point. They played a lot of football. Also got Jeff Roberson to transfer in as a power conference transfer. How do you think the snaps at linebacker shape up? Do you think, I feel like this is going to be a strong linebacker unit. What do you think, House?
I think it'll be situational, kind of how those guys are used. You'll see a lot of Dev and Mav, Roberson working his way in. I thought Joey Gerlach popped a little bit in the spring when we were there making some plays. Maybe he's taken a step forward in his progression. I think it was just the physicality piece, adjusting to that, because he definitely has the athletic ability and movement skills that, you're looking for a linebacker. It was just taking that next step physically. Matt Kingsbury, somebody that I think, could work on ball or off ball. Maybe they, get him some snaps working down to the rush end in certain packages. I think he saw that a little bit in the bowl game. So, linebacker, I feel as if they, have some guys there that they can use on, certain situations, mixing it up. And Mav's experience level, Dev's experience level, like they have enough experience there that, along with some of the guys that have been developing up, they should be, okay at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I agree. What about now my guy that's close to my heart? So how's John and I both I grew up in Fargo. He grew up in Moorhead, just opposite sides of the river. And oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. I totally lost it. It's gone. John, oh my God, I just went blank I haven't done that in a long, long time on here. All right, so we'll move on then.
We can revisit it.
Yeah, we can revisit it if I think of what I was going to say, but that's okay. Let's talk about the secondary. That's funny. That's funny that I just did that. All right, safeties are oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. We can come back to it. Yes, the guy that I want to be good. But I grew up going to Detroit Lakes. We both did.
Yes,
Mason Carrier, man.
Mason Carrier, man. I remember watching his high school film and also just watching his high school lifting weights film.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that is an explosive athlete. I know he might be a little young to be getting a big role at linebacker, but do you think he carves out a role on special teams this year? And do you have high hopes for him in the future the way we do?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I got to see a little bit more of him in practice and get some more reps. But, the film definitely, was something that popped. I know Joe Rossi liked him a lot when he was recruiting him, that he was someone that popped and caught his eye as well. So it's one of those things where it's hard to get a pinpoint on where some of these younger players are at, because, you're not at practice as much, because of, availability. But you look at the main way you get an idea of where players are at is once they get in the game. So I think probably special teams would be the spot that he's at right now.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be exciting to see, for sure. All right, then let's talk about this secondary. The safeties are absolutely fantastic. You've got boy wonder Koi Perich. You've got Kerry Brown back, who is also fantastic. You could argue is probably even a little more consistent than Koi, even if he doesn't have quite the same, athletic upside. And then Aiden Gooseby, after a really rough 2023, came back and played really well last year, I thought. So I feel really good about safety. Obviously, corner is less certain. You've got a plethora of guys competing for time, including transfer Jalen Bowden and rising sophomore Zaquan Bryan. How do you feel about the whole secondary? Do you think this has the potential to be another great gopher unit, or are you kind of worried about cornerback and nickelback?
I feel, here's what I think. I think Minnesota will probably use Koi a little bit more in the nickel piece so they can get the three safeties on the field. Working on his man coverage and his physicality. You got to remember the guy came in June last year.
Yeah.
So
he was
played,
hurt.
Yeah, that too. He had to rehab a touch and then get ready to play. So now you think about, they probably can unlock more versatility in his game just based on the time that he's been here. So I'd say I'm watching him potentially sliding down situationally to play nickel and passing downs to allow them to utilize his movement skills and his coverage ability. And then they could have Carey and, Aiden out on the field as well with him. So they're going to use the versatility of the safety room. I know Garrison Monroe had a pretty good spring. They got Darius Green, who's, didn't do a lot in the spring, but, a veteran player who can come in situationally. I think you're going to see them try to get those safeties out on the field a lot in different packages and sub packages. Jayante McMillan, you could kind of classify him in as a safety as well, kind of a nickel safety type that comes down, when they're going to be in dime or, as like a sub package nickel. He's someone that could emerge for some snaps too. I think the cornerback spot, like you say, that's where it's kind of less certain. You got Zaquan, obviously, but who emerges opposite of him? Jalen Bowden trying to pick it up, coming from NC Central's an FCS guy. I think you look at how he's got good movement skills, like good athleticism and length. It's just going to be about, getting used to the speed of the game and picking up all the little nuances and details of the scheme. But, him along with Rylan Kelly, who's been in the program for a while, Sam Madu, they have some younger players there. Who is someone that could emerge? Is there a surprise guy? I thought Naeem Parrish, freshman, popped a little bit in the spring when we were there. Seems to be very instinctive for a young player. Played at Bergen Catholic, who does a really good job of developing corners. I'm not saying he's going to be a guy that, potentially emerges as a starter, but could be, rotational snap player. So yes, they do have some things to figure out at corner, who emerges opposite Zaquan, but I do think they're going to interchange the safeties a lot as nickel, between nickel and safety. And Carey can do a lot of stuff with versatility too. I mean, he plays free, strong, nickel, all that stuff. I'm a big Carey Brown guy. I think he's got a very bright future.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Everybody talks about Koi, but I'm high on Carey Brown. I think he's got a very bright future.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on
Carey?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John. No,
I was just going to say, what are your thoughts on John Nestor, the Iowa transfer?
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of how he fits in. It sounds like corner here. I kind of feel like he's more of a safety skill set potentially. Is he kind of a nickel player that they use in that type of capacity on passing downs? I want to see how he kind of fits into the mix. I feel like he's kind of a tweener between playing safety, corner, nickel, but he's someone that I believe, had a lot of interest and interaction with in four-year recruiting, kind of pivoted back when he hit the transfer portal and brought him in as a depth option.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I thought McMillan flashed in the practices I saw. I was favorably impressed with him, so it's Bowden, it's not Bowden, huh? It's Bowden.
Okay. Jalen Bowden, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought he looked good too. So it'll be, I feel like I'm supposed to be really nervous about our secondary, but our safeties are so good and we've been so consistent in the secondary from year to year under PJ that I just really, going back to Jerry Kilt, we've been consistent in the secondary pretty much, most of the time. So I guess I'm less worried about that but we'll see. I think it's good that we have, and when we get to the schedule game in a short bit, we can talk about it. But I do think, considering the new guys we have kind of a nice runway schedule wise for guys to get up to